The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Hello, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Nisa.
And boy, is this going to be an interesting show. We had a very interesting week.
As always.
And you know, I got to say, it's going crazy. Friday afternoon, as we know, ISIS generated an attack on France. And I can't even speak. I mean, how horrified the people of France were. And I mean, I saw some of the video, and I was actually watching live satellite feeds from France on several of our network connections. And it was terrible. And then, of course, this has just gotten worse as time goes on. Shortly after that attack, ISIS listed the target cities in the United States for their attacks, of which, by the way, we are within 20 miles of one, that location being Newport, Rhode Island. And we have to say, what are we doing? It's very interesting to know, though, that our president has still said he is going to allow the Syrian refugees, over 10,000 of them, into the country without vetting them. And this is what happened in France. They didn't vet the refugees, and allegedly one of the terrorists came in with that group. They weren't even based out of France. They were based out of Belgium. And it was three brothers who led this attack. And they went into a public forum, a concert, and they started it there, and it fell into the streets. 120 some odd people killed, over 300 injured, and the numbers are still climbing. And, you know, we have to really look at what has happened to our world. These are trying times. And at a football game yesterday with the Green Bay Packers, a fan screamed out a hate message about Muslims in general. And, you know, the Quran does not speak about killing everybody. The Quran speaks that if you should kill an innocent people, it's worse for you. I believe that's in the Quran 5. But we have to look at, you know, what is happening. I honestly am kind of at a loss for this. We had a presidential candidate, Donald Trump, who closed for the borders of our country when he first started his campaign. He's now calling for it even more so. And his numbers are climbing very rapidly. And it's very interesting to see how the states, the United States, has become so reactionary to this situation. And, you know, I don't want to focus a lot of time of the show on this, but we do need to address it. And I think that it's important that we as people understand that, you know, we can all go around saying, pray for Paris and, you know, keep them in your prayers. And yes, I agree we should do that. But I made a comment over the weekend because everybody on Facebook has decided to put the French flag over their profile pictures. And I said, you know, this is how Facebook has made millions of dollars numerous times on previous issues. And I do not believe that anyone or any corporation should make money on a tragedy. And I won't do that to my profile picture, but people are doing it. And I actually got vilified. I was being a hateful, negative person again. I'm telling you, Chip, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, I'm hateful and negative. I think they're going to send me to the ISIS state of Iraq and Syria. Oh, by the way, people, that's what ISIS stands for, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. They're going to send me there to be executed because, you you can't say anything anymore. You just can't.
CJ, I experienced a little bit of the same hostile things that was going on in your Facebook. So with me, I didn't put the flag either. So someone had asked me why I had not put it on my profile, and I felt like it was unnecessary, and that's what I said. It's not that I'm not sympathizing with what occurred in Paris, and then when I finally did say pray for Paris, I got bashed by someone who said, keep your religious things out of, apparently they believe that I was some sort of a Christian or whatnot, you know, and they said praying for Paris isn't gonna do anything, send them their well wishes, and I said, is it not the same? You understand what I'm talking about? It's just a way of saying, I'm sending your good wishes, good luck to Paris, keep them in your hearts. But some people don't understand that. I was also being negative by saying pray for Paris.
Well, I guess it's my turn.
We know your motto, Chip.
Well, let's put this in perspective here, okay? Radicalism is always a bad thing, regardless of what religion it is. There were Christian radicals that created the Crusades, which actually was the beginning of all this hostility between Christians and Muslims. So the fact is that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's a very long-standing feud. But there are other issues here. Number one, it's bad enough when we're going to allow people in without vetting them, because you've got to understand that radicalism is something that's very difficult to find. But it's the radicalization of non-Syrians and non-Middle Easterners. We have Americans that are becoming radicalized. In every single country, ISIS is recruiting people from that nation. And the problem is, everybody had better realize it's impossible to stop this. You can minimize it, but you can't stop it. Because when someone is willing to die for what they believe in, well, how are you going to stop them? You walk in a supermarket and blow themselves up or kill people. You know, it's the reality of the world that we live in today. And all we can do is be always vigilant and try to minimize it. And this is not something new. On this scale, it's relatively, it's relatively something that's really escalated. But we can go back into our own, Western civilization history as early as the beginning of the 20th century, when they had the problems in Northern Ireland with all the safeguards, the British troops and all the British troops in Ireland. They couldn't stop terrorist actions, because the reality is, if someone is so radical that they're willing to die for their belief, these incidents are going to occur. The only thing we can do is be as vigilant as possible and make it as difficult as possible for people who are radical. We have to really, I just don't understand how we're going to allow anybody in this country without exhaustive vetting. And that's not even going to cure the problem. As I said, they're radicalizing people within every country, in Europe and in the United States. So this is a problem. It's difficult. It's difficult to watch. Civilians who have basically tourists and residents of Paris and were there trying to go on with their lives, and they're targeted. And it's a different kind of war, because they believe everybody who doesn't believe the way they do is their enemy.
Right.
So we are all targets, and it's up to us, again, to make sure that our government does everything it can to minimize the danger. And with that being said, it's really an impossibility to totally eliminate it. And we've done a pretty good job since 9/11 in this country with looking at uncovering plots and stuff. But as I said, it's a difficult undertaking, and you know, our thoughts go out to the people in Paris, as you know, as the world rallied around us when we had 9/11. But you know, it's a difficult thing, but it's a reality we all have to face, and attempting to try to, you know, look at this in any way but a very, very, very objective and calculating way, and realize that this is a major, major issue throughout the world, and this is going to be, it's going to be difficult. You know, I know France has made airstrikes on ISIS, and they supposedly did a lot of damage, but you got to remember, these people have a radical belief, and they believe that we are the infidels, we are their enemies, and you know, and they are going to retaliate in kind. So this is kind of like, you know, this is the life we know it as today. So that's
Very sad.
that's my spin on it. We have to realize that it's not only the Syrians coming in our country. We have to be vigilant about people within our own country becoming radicalized.
Yeah, and we've seen that where we've had several Americans who have joined ISIS and have actually been videotaped, you know, committing atrocities. So, you know, we need to be sure of our own safety here in this country. And I think that the xenophobic behavior that people are saying is out there is a lot of what we probably need to start doing here in the United States. We don't want terrorists to change our way of life, but at the same time, we don't want them to, you know, come in and destroy us or our way of life. But moving on to some local issues. This weekend, I had a fun time. You'll never guess who I met with this weekend. I met with 5, not 1, but 5 executives from Project Diamond, now renamed to Project Brown Eye. And all 5 of them, all 5, from Novo Nordisk, which was the company that Fall River was trying to bring in to build a plant to make more drugs. By the way, the company makes biopharmaceuticals, which are basically replacement hormones, I shouldn't say anti, they also make coagulants and insulin. Those are their 3 major pharmaceutical products that they make. And they make 1 weight loss drug, which no insurance company is paying for yet. But I had a very good conversation with them, and one of them said, I didn't even know Fall River was being considered until I read it before we had this meeting here in the paper. I said, really? They said, no, because we've always known that they were going to North Carolina. I said, really? They said, oh yeah, you know, it's right next to our plant that's down there already. So I'm like, you mean to tell me that you already have a plant down there and you're locating another plant right next to it? And they said, well, yes. I said, why wouldn't you locate it here in Fall River? And they said, well, the location may be good, but we weren't even part of that negotiation. And obviously it wasn't a serious situation because they never spoke to anybody in the region. And these are the regional people. I asked them very clearly, I said, could it be possible that they took the deal that was offered by Fall River and went down to the Carolinas and presented the deal and said, can you do better than this? Because if so, we'll locate here. And they said, well, we can't make a comment on that. And I said, well, it seems to me that they were shopping around, which is kind of like what every business is going to do. Mm-hmm. They said, but one of the things you have to look at very seriously here is that you do not have the educational level in your workforce. And we're dealing with genetic manipulation in this drug manufacture because all of our drugs are derived from genetic manipulation. They use genetic structures to make insulin, replacement hormones, and coagulants. So people have to have a knowledge of that. This isn't like sewing together a curtain or a sweater. So again, the Fall River Office of Economic Destruction again accomplished its goal to again destroy the firm belief that Fall River can do something. And it's kind of sad. It truly is. And I said very clearly to them, I said, well, they touted Amazon as being the savior of Fall River going into that biopark. And they're like, yeah, well, I'm not going to make a comment on that. And that's what all of them said. They're not going to make a comment on it. They said, but it makes no sense for a biopark to have a warehouse in it. So, which is something I think we've spoken about on this show several times. But then again, what do I know?
Well, you know, as we've said before, the workforce in Fall River, virtually the people who are employable are employed. There are very, very few people with any kind of skills that have not either gone somewhere else or are employed. The fact is that the remaining people who are unemployed have extremely narrow abilities, and they are normally going to be put in jobs that are the last person hired and the first people fired. So it's very difficult to get people. This is why, rather than what they should be doing is offering apprenticeship programs and training programs to give these people some level of some skill. And it did happen out in Rhode Island. I know that. It's very, very common in Germany. In Rhode Island, they were beginning to teach people how to weld and then getting them jobs in the shipyards and in EB and stuff like that. And this is a transition. This is what helps people who don't have any skills. It's not something that you need to go to college for, but it's a technical skill. And they taught them how to weld and do various other things, maybe do some basic machine work with maybe operating drill presses and stuff like that, where they could actually be marketable in the job, in the job, to try to become part of the workforce. But the Office of Economic Development spends more time coming up with code names and propaganda to justify their existence, because like we said about the in the last election, some people can't run on their record, so they attack the other people. And the Office of Economic Development can't run on their record. So what they do is they push out propaganda all the time about, this company's coming and that, we had the casino, and so now forever we'll hear about Amazon, but let's see what happens when Amazon actually gets here. How many people, and they'll never give you that number. I want to know exactly how many Fall River people who were unemployed previously were hired in Amazon, even though that's a fairly low-skilled job. I want to know, because I will guarantee you, and I'm a betting man, that it's not a big amount. And this is one of the problems that we have. We have to wade through the BS all the time to get to the reality. And the reality is, listen, even if they, who is going to come here? It's like the tourism deal. It's like, yeah, Newport's targeted. Why? A lot of tourists, a lot of money. That's why they targeted Newport. It's like, so who's going to come here? We just finished, 1,132nd out of 1,200 cities between 25,000 and 100,000 people in the country. So whenever a company comes here, they don't just hire the entire place from Fall River. Their upper echelon management normally comes with them. They have to relocate.
They relocate, yes.
And when you're looking at a company and if you're a really viable company and you want your executives to go to a place and relocate, how are you going to tell one of your people who's living in a place that has low crime, good education, and none of the problems we face up here to come to this area? It's like, really? You really? I mean, these people can't read these studies, and there's not one. There's a myriad of studies. We've been showing studies where Fall River's ranked and all the bad things at the top and all the good things at the bottom since we've been on the air. And as I said, you got to build this city back up block by block. And the first thing is to straighten out public safety and education, make those priorities, make this a safer, better, more attractive place to live, and then people might move in. because the only people we have moving in are in subsidized housing. And that's the problem. And nobody wants to look at the whole picture. Have you ever heard the old adage, you can't see the forest for the tree? We fixate on the tree all the time.
Yeah.
We have major problems.
Part of bettering the education here in Fall River, I think that what you had mentioned about gaining experience and having people develop these skills, whether it be through volunteering or an intern program, that's a good point, and I just wanted to elaborate that, yes, in Rhode Island, we have had a lot of these programs developed throughout the last couple years because of the fact that a lot of people coming out of high school or college, they weren't being hired because they don't have the experience. So if no one gives them a chance, how will they develop the experience and the skills and the qualifications to put on their resume? So that's a good point. I just wanted to bring that up.
Well, you know, the thing that gets me is the spokesperson for the Office of Economic Destruction in the paper, you know, said very clearly about, oh, well, you know, they at least considered Fall River. We were considered to be in the mix. You know, Frank, here's what I got to tell you. You weren't in the mix, okay? You were the bargaining tool, okay? They went to the poker table and they said, I'll raise you Fall River. And guess what? North Carolina came back and said, and we'll beat that and we'll raise you North Carolina. And North Carolina won. And that's the way it worked.
Well, you know, yeah, but that's a good point. But the problem is, look, I don't care if we're in the mix all the time. In this game, the only place that counts is first place. You've got to get the jobs. And that's one of the problems. Even if we are in the mix, when we look at this thing objectively and look at what they're looking at for the final decision, like, you know, everybody knows what people look at. They look at educational levels, they look at educational systems, they look at crime, they look at the housing and the housing markets, and they look at the places you can live. And this is always a deal breaker with Fall River, because they just won't address these problems. We have a bunch of people who continue to say what a wonderful place this is, and the fact is that, you know, we have a great location. It was you know, we did have a city that had people working, even blue collar, but it's changed. Most of the people have moved out. You know, our educational systems is a shamble, even though they continue to propaganda. You know, I mean, you know, Meg Mayo Brown is almost, I guess, she's going to be canonized in a couple of weeks because, you know, you're listening to the propaganda from these people. She's the greatest educator there's ever been. Yet the documents we receive say that not one target has been met. So this is the kind of propaganda and lack of, you know, an overall perspective on the city that's allowed this city over the last 20 years to go into a malaise. And you know, it was funny last night because there was on 60 Minutes, they interviewed the new Paul Ryan, the new speaker. And it was funny to listen to him talk about, because the interviewer asked him, well, do you work for the Freedom Party, or do you work because of the deals in Washington? And it was very nice to hear on nationwide TV. He said, well, that was a pretty good question. He said, pretty tricky. He said, but I work for the people. Well, let's hope he was being truthful, but it was nice to hear one of the highest ranking politicians in the United States remind not only, you know, the general public, but the other people that he works with in government, that, hey, at least somebody actually realizes who you're supposed to be working for. You're not working for special interest groups. You're not working for lobbyists. You're not working for your party. You're working for the people of the United States, the people of your city, the people of your state. And when he went on to say he represents his district in Congress. That's who he works for. But it was refreshing. And he also talked about how politics has changed so much, where years ago they could argue and disagree, but they never took it personally. Now they take it personal, extend it to families, attack people personally, and he said that was wrong.
That's straight
so
up
that's
dirty.
refreshing. Yeah. That's refreshing to hear a politician actually say, you know, it's being done, but it shouldn't be done. And hopefully, with him as speaker now, it'll change a little bit of the dialogue, and I hope everybody listened.
Well, it's definitely a different country, and I don't know if it's for the better or the worse, but I think that we as a city need to realize that I'm going to say something which is totally politically incorrect. Yeah, totally politically incorrect. We're stupid. Okay? This city is stupid. They think that, you know, Novo Nordisk is going to come to Fall River because we have a biopark, which has been destroyed, but we have a biopark, and they're going to want to come here because we have a good work ethic. We have a good workforce. There is no workforce anymore. There is no work ethic. Anyone who's working doesn't live here. They've moved away. And the workforce we had was in manufacture, textiles, not genetically engineered insulin or genetically engineered coagulants. And I think we need to look at our educational system, and we need to be very clear on it, that if the schools are not performing, why? Well, I'll give you one reason why our schools aren't performing. Because Fall River, again, did something that had already been decided that was ineffective and produced the worst results. They created megalithic schools. And they took that idea from California, because California did it, and it started making its way across the country. And by the time it made it about a quarter of the way across the country, they said, wait a minute, test scores went into the toilet, get rid of those megalithic schools, and they went back to smaller neighborhood-based type schools. And those are what is rampant across the country in school systems which are producing. Okay? When I was in Minnesota, Minnesota is amazing in their school systems. Okay? I've never seen school systems where kids feel so challenged that they fight to be at the top of the class. They fight for the grades. In Fall River, they fight to get out the door.
I can say that's definitely true. I lived in Minnesota for about 6 or 7 months, and I was there for 7th grade, and I can say that I said, you guys try really hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that mentality at the time. I was a very average CD student at the time, so it was very surprising.
But that educational system that we have needs a massive overhaul.
Yeah.
Massive.
You can't really count Minnesota. It's so cold up there. They go to school to stay out of the cold. So, no wonder they spend so much time in a classroom. It's so damn cold up there. If you look at there's actually a anthropological theory that said that there's more scientific advancements and stuff in cold weather climates because people have more indoor time and time to think.
Yeah.
But that's
That's a good point.
But that's, well, if you look at Europe, look at the warmer countries like Italy, they would sit under a tree drinking wine, and you look at Germany and these other countries that were very technologically advanced, they're frigid in the winter. So, but look, you know, the reality is, don't pay attention to the bull. And, you know, I don't believe, you know, the reality is the underride was from cities that we talked about on the last show.
Yep.
Were from cities with very high educational levels. And listen, we can't do a heck of a lot right now because all the people that do get educated here have to leave. So it's kind of a catch-22, but we can only do that by block improving the city. So stay angry, stay involved, and be careful.
And
Great week.
be watching us Wednesday because we might have a very interesting announcement.
Yes, we do. Good day.
Have a great day, everyone.
Oh, and by the way, Dan Robillard won the contest. He got 15 out of 16 right in the election.
Oh, okay, great.